Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Coffee with Chris, as always in association with our charity partner, 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗶𝘀, who help local people affected by cancer, and proudly sponsored by Hill Coaching Company, here to help you become a better version of yourself today. Now, it's a coincidence that I've just read out that plug because let's welcome the guest today, who is Oliver Hill, director of Hill Coaching Company. He helps determined individuals to achieve their full potential. Oliver, welcome to A Coffee with Chris. Let's kick off with this question. Should directors outsource their social media accounts or should they not?
Well, firstly, Chris, thank you very much for inviting me on the podcast, which I now sponsor. And I'm very happy to do so because you've already got some cracking guests on. So really looking forward to what the year brings. So apologies, everybody, you have to start with me. But in all seriousness, this is something that's very personal to my heart and also impacts a lot of my clients. So the first answer that I would give to that is if you're already smashing your social media, then of course not. However, if that question is something you're asking, then absolutely 100% yes, you should. You should outsource it to somebody else. You should give it to them to run. It does not mean that you lose control of it. It does not mean that you can't put your own posts out. But one of the things that I have fallen flat down on many times, because Chris and I have had a regular on and off relationship, because as will become clear, I don't love social media. However, I recognize its value. When I have one of my dips, the consistency falls off a cliff because I have important things to do. And whilst this is important, there are the day jobs that just come up the priority list higher than that. So absolutely, if you're serious about social media, the consistency of posting needs to be handled by an external agency if you don't have somebody full-time employed to do it yourself.
I love that, Oliver. It's a cracking start. And I really want to be abundantly clear from the off. This isn't a big sales pitch, this podcast. It's really important that we do the light and shade piece. There's positives and negatives to, keeping your personal social accounts if you're a director, and also some positives and negatives to outsourcing them as well, right? So we'll try and be, as broad as possible and cover each of the angles there. Oliver, great point about consistency, obviously, because everyone has those busy periods, and fantastic point about this perhaps stigma or thought process of once you give it to someone else, either your marketing executive that you actually have inside the business or an external social media specialist, I think there might be this worry that they have to do everything for you and that you can't do everything. And I personally am of the faith that a good social specialist that you outsource to should still enable you to create ideas, to publish content. And at the end of the day, if you are at an event or something like that and need to get something out fast, you can still do that yourself. But it's that consistency piece, right, Oliver? And I was speaking to Luke Plain on a former episode of A Coffee with Chris, and we spoke about employer brand. I'm sure you've got an opinion on this. I think there's such a big area of latent potential for directors here because, as you know, people buy from people, but also prospective employees and A players want to buy into the director of the business, right? Because, as you know, people quit their jobs because of the managers and not necessarily because of the organization. So it's really important for a director to demonstrate their company culture, what they're passionate about, their company story, right? Would you agree with that, or am I talking rubbish?
No, 100%. I mean, it's one of those things. It's about there's levels, isn't there? I mean, that might be a level further than they're willing to go, of course. But if you're happy to do it, then I think first and foremost, showcasing what you and perhaps the other leadership are like, depending on the size of company, that's going to be really, really important for future employees, future clients, and things like that. But also, there's like a second level underneath that, and I know you advocate this strongly, is with the right training and support, your staff being actively encouraged to post properly. And we're going to talk about certain things you do and don't do later, so I'm not going to jump in on those at the moment. But that whole piece, it's not just you as a director or directors plural, it's the business as a whole being trusted to share their thoughts, share the business's ideas, share things that aren't the business's ideas that come into other people's feeds. That genuine, organic, natural sort of communication piece that I feel just steps things up another level.
Absolutely, Oliver. And I'll say something else as well. Honestly, a reason for you to not outsource your LinkedIn, for example, if you are a company director, is if you are going to go, nah, it's not for me, I'm just going to dump it on someone else, and I'm not going to follow up any comments, any direct messages. If someone is going to take the time to build your personal brand or make you a thought leader, or however you want to package that, you need to be able to respond to those comments as quickly, professionally, and politely as possible. And obviously direct messages too, because if not, it's actually probably more damaging for your personal brand. There's so many people locally that do this so well. Nathan Lomax is a great example of someone that creates lots of noise himself, but also follows it up. I know, Oliver, you're really good on that on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, just a few opening thoughts for our viewers and listeners there. Oliver, I want to talk about time, because of course, the reason why directors want to get rid of social is because not only is it a massive distraction, people know that the UX of these platforms are built like gambling websites, they suck up your time and attention, but also you can unlock a ton of time, right, by outsourcing it. So I'd be quite interested to hear your thoughts on this, and how much time do you save, for example, by outsourcing your social media accounts?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really huge piece, because depending on how you do it, if you were to sit down and do it over a block for the whole month, or perhaps you're going to do it occasionally, or perhaps you're even going to do it at short notice, maybe you're due to do one the next day, so you'll do it tonight. The problem is stuff happens, you know. For me, here's a perfect example. I'll be perfectly honest with the listeners. I've had a little bit of ill health, is the wrong thing to describe, but I've been getting quite a lot of really bad headaches linked to a muscle problem that I've got at the moment. And there is no chance, not a chance in hell, that I would have been able to consistently maintain the social media, because I was struggling to do just basic stuff for about 2 or 3 weeks. So the thought of doing social media posts and so forth, if I hadn't already got them in place, just wasn't going to happen. There's other things, you know, if business opportunities are really positive and suddenly you get inundated with work. I've got a few clients like that who are doing so well, there's not a hope that they would be able to do the post. And I know I've got one, I won't mention them, I won't name them, but I can think of one specific person that we've set dedicated actions on social media to do, and they've done none of them. And the reason they've done none of them is they've doubled their turnover this year, which means they've doubled their work levels. They've had to manage teams bigger than they ever anticipated. These are all fantastic problems, but as a result, the social media, and therefore the stuff that was building momentum, gaining them all this new business and clients, is going to fall off a cliff next year because they're not doing it, and they know this. They know this. So absolutely, the first thing, it does save you time. But again, at the back is that annoying consistency piece, which is going. So even if you don't have time to do the bits yourself around it, at least there's content going out there. You're remaining in people's feed, putting out great bits of content that people see organically. That's really, really important. So yes, it does save time outsourcing or giving it to somebody within the business. But again, that consistency piece is running underneath it as well for me. And the final bit that I would add to it as well is the time that it's taking you. I know what my day rate is. You know, it's a 4-figure sum, my day rate. Yeah. And that's a lot of money for me to not be working on the stuff that brings in another day rate's worth of income. And I can think of plenty of social media providers for whom that one day rate would produce me an amazing amount of content, and potentially other things that I could do on top of that. So it's also the time piece, but also the resources piece. Think about it as a cost per hour. What's the most sensible use of your time and money and resources?
So true, Oliver. I know that directors think like that. Well, a lot of people think like that, but especially directors, right? The maths. Yeah. The maths always makes sense. It's an absolute no-brainer. If you're £50 an hour, £100 an hour, £1,000 a day, whatever it is, however long it takes you. Because the other thing as well is it does naturally take some people longer to write a social post, right? So times one, and all of a sudden daily content, that's a lot of time. So I think it's a very interesting perspective to think about.
Sorry to cut in, Chris, but one thing I'll also talk about, and it might be down to the tech that I use, but I use a lot of video in my content. And I tell you, the pain I have being in Norwich, uploading videos, oh, it's agony. And then the worst thing, I could be uploading a video that's taken a while and it crashes. And then you're like, Whew. And you can't, with the way I use it, so on my iPhone, suddenly that makes my iPhone redundant, because if I dare upload a video and then open another app or something, that's more likely to crash. So that might be personal user error, I don't know. But honestly, uploads is still going to take time. So it's all these things where you just look at it and you think, nah, this does not make sense at all.
What a lovely, funny anecdote. I'm sure it's not just you, Oliver. I want to ask you about the mindset hurdles, I think, Oliver, because that's something that you're delving into all of the time. And obviously, as someone that is coaching top directors so regularly, what are those mindset hurdles in terms of what are those things that they're struggling with when it comes to getting themselves out there on, say, LinkedIn, for example? Why don't directors commit to that?
Yeah, one of the first one is it's a cost, which it isn't. It's an investment. If you do it correctly, it's an investment. It's a cost. I have the same challenges with coaching. People think about, oh, that's expensive. On paper, those numbers look expensive, but the return on investment, it's cheap as chips because of what you're going to achieve at the end of it. Same principle. The second one is lack of control. Whether they would like to admit it or not, many people in these situations are slight micromanagers, have a few trust issues, things along those lines. So we have to delve into that, and we have to understand, and how do we police it? How do we reach agreements with people, with the contractors or with the internal members of staff to do it? So they would be the first two main objections. The third one would be, not unlike what we've just talked about, time. Where am I going to get the time to do this? If I meet somebody, say they've had a great meeting with a potential provider, there's still things that you do need to do. So let's not pretend that you get away with this scot-free. You're still going to have to give people like Chris content, ideas, and so forth as well. So that can be a little off-putting for them. So it has to be made clear when they're going to find those times to sit down and give that information. So they would definitely be the top three. There'd be smaller little things that creep in, but that most likely is going to resonate with most people who are a bit resistant towards this.
So good to get your insights on that, Oliver, because as I say, you are speaking to those top coaches all the time, and they're not uncommon for me to speak to people about as well. The one that comes up for me more often than not is, what the hell are you going to post on my account for me, Chris? And that's where that strategy piece, that consultative piece comes in at the start of the process. With a good social specialist, they should really, really properly plan who's your ideal customer profile, what's your target market, how often are you going to post, on each day of the week, what are you going to post during a month, what do you want to cover, what are your commercial objectives, right? And if you cover all of those things properly, that piece is then just dead easy. Speaking of social suppliers, Oliver, as someone that has referred lots of work to us as an agency, I'd be really interested to hear from you, and also as someone that's been approached by other social media agencies. What are the red flags that managing directors should look out for when picking, or when they are approached by a social media supplier? Because, of course, there's a lot of good guys out there, but let's be really honest, there's also a lot of cowboys. So what are the things that people should look out for, Oliver?
Yeah. So the first big red flag that most people I think would identify with, but I'm aware of people who haven't, is when they are promising things which just sound too good to be true.
Like what? Like what?
So, for example, I will increase your number of followers by X in this time. I will, increase the number of comments you get by X, or I will actually create the number of leads generated for your business by doing X. Question marks. Now, if that individual can then back that up with the things that we actually need, which is lots of genuine recommendations and reviews. So it's nice, reviews are out there, but let's make sure we know who these people are. So if you've seen some reviews and you think that's quite a good review, check that person out. The person who's left the review, do they exist? Are they there? Is that company that they're associated to still in business? All these sorts of things, because that's the most important part. And for me personally, I am always a fan of personal recommendations. So genuine referrals, people that have been delivering such a good service for somebody else that they've said, I think you would benefit from this because they've been so good for me. I mean, you just can't beat that. The vast majority of my clients come from exactly that, word of mouth referrals. Yes, Many people do see the content that I put out there and they like the sound of that and they'll have a conversation. So that's like the second tier. But the first tier is always word of mouth. And isn't that a wonderful thing to take somebody on board when you know they genuinely have benefited from them and are recommending them? That just takes away so much of the worry.
Yes, totally with you, as you'd fully expect. I love the line about falling for the vanity metrics of increasing followers, but 10xing your followers or things like that. That's like, please, if you're listening to this and you're a managing director, do not fall for a vanity metric claim in approach. And I'll tell you the other thing, Oliver, which I was really impressed by the other day, which I loved. It wasn't actually a social supplier. It was a website specialist, actually. He had approached me saying, "Hey, Chris," it was on LinkedIn. "Hi, Chris. I've just spotted X, Y, Z on your website. And if we changed X, Y, and Z, then the outcome of that could be this." And I was like, okay, I like your style there, because you've actually gone to the bother of politely and gently telling me the areas of latent potential. You've not just shown up and thrown up. Go and listen to episode with Matt Sykes about showing up and throwing up in LinkedIn private messages, by the way.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's a really important piece. Would you also agree with that, Oliver?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't really use my in-mail very much. I'll check my direct messaging on LinkedIn, but I can already tell the ones that won't be listened or opened or read because of the first few lines that you can at least see. And it's like, the one I particularly find, this one really, if I allow it to, and obviously with my coaching, I'm able to coach myself out of this thinking. But when it initially comes through, and in the early days, I was like, how bloody rude, because they will say, we can help you get more leads. Well, with the greatest deal of respect, beep, how do you know what beeping my business is doing at the minute? How dare you presume that I need more leads? What an absolutely obtuse way to start things. So that really irritates me. And exactly that. If you've not even gone to the bother of checking out my stuff, at least those people, have taken you to dinner first. They've bothered to look at your content. So that's a really important piece. But I would say the vast majority of people who use LinkedIn don't fall for that. So I'm amazed how many people still do it. Because I don't understand how they think it's ever going to work.
Yeah, it is plagued with it, unfortunately. Speaking of LinkedIn, Oliver, I want to ask you about kind of best practice, really, and your thoughts on that. I see so many directors that they see their strategy on LinkedIn as, well, the company posts, and I'm just going to go to the company page and just hit share without a comment. And they think that that's their strategy to help improve their employer brand, to improve their personal brand, to get more leads for their business, to remind people of what they're doing. I mean, I mean, that's a statement that I'm throwing at you. That's rubbish, right?
Yeah. I mean, some people would say, oh, it's better than doing nothing. I'm not sure it is. It shows you don't really care. It shows, I mean, we've all done it. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I haven't just blind. Like, if one of my clients has got a job post out there, I will just repost it. I'm probably not going to put some blurb out there, but the chance that it might fall in front of somebody else in my feed, I'm happy to do it. But I'm not necessarily going to the trouble of finding out what the job is and the details and sending it. So I do understand to a point. But if it's your company, and you've got a job and you're the boss and you're just reposting the post about the job, well, sell it, do something. Or if it's your product and you've done a really cool bit of marketing on your business page and all you're going to do is repost it, well, what does that say about what you think about it? Because you should be massively excited about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the people out there who are well known on social media, the sort of almost celebrity types, they don't do it. So if they're not doing it and they're doing very well and very successful, why on earth do you think it would work for you by not doing it? So absolutely. And it goes with other things, just liking stuff, especially if it's your own staff stuff and things, your own company stuff, just liking it. What do you think that's going to do?
Yeah. Likes are so valueless now. Like, of course, they carry some value, but not enough. And comments are so much better in terms of your own engagement, but also, in terms of your staff, your team's content. Absolutely bang on, Oliver. I think directors are not stupid, right? They know They know that they need to be sharing content that helps to create trust and that allows people to know them, right? They're really good at those two areas of the know, like, and trust. However, they really suck at likability. They're never sharing anything about their personal journey, why they started their business, what are their personal values, why are they hiring in this area, why do they care so much about helping the environment? There's all those things, right, that they could be saying, but for some reason they choose not to. I think the reason that I'm getting at is they just don't have enough time. And I think that's probably the conclusive point.
Yes, that probably is part of it, but also that falls into those horrible excuse categories that when working with me as a client, you don't get away with that because that is BS. If it's important enough, we find time. But also what I think you're touching on here is something we probably should have mentioned earlier in the objections bit, is the whole imposter syndrome piece. Now, imposter syndrome is a thing. I think everybody knows what we mean by it. I don't know how much value I put in it as a terminology, but it's definitely, there is a thing where people do not like to talk about themselves. People don't like to recognize how successful they are. You and I both know an individual who's incredibly successful and would certainly have himself diagnosed with imposter syndrome. And it's ludicrous because he is in the top 1% of people in terms of achievements and things like that. But it doesn't make it any less real to him. And there's a particular thing that he wants to overcome based on that. And I think with social media, if you make it about yourself, you're a bit worried that, I don't know, I'll get found out, or people will realize everything's a sham, or, you know, I don't know what I'm talking about, I'll get found out and challenged and publicly flogged. All these things start coming up. So the easiest thing to do is to just pretend it's not there, ignore it, post it away, and it's gone. And we can like, I've done my bit. Whereas if I actually say what I think about stuff and put my own words to it, what if somebody comes back and says something mean, you know? And it's not fun. There are silly people out there who say stupid things. But you've got to be confident in your own product, in your own business, in your own team, in whatever it is you're promoting. And if you're not confident about people taking a job, for example, if you haven't reposted it, then maybe there's something to have a think about. Because if you're generally not happy to post that stuff, then there's maybe a bigger issue in front of us here.
Very, very fair point. Oliver, we could do around 2, around 3 for sure, but I think we've already given managing directors plenty to think about. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom with me today. Oliver, where can people find out about you? Where can they connect with you?
So the best way is via LinkedIn. If you just look for either my page, which is Hill Coaching Company, we've just started to push that page. It's quite new, or through just connecting with me directly on LinkedIn. I've also got a website which is very creatively called www.hillcoachingcompany.co.uk. And I do have a little YouTube channel, but again, that's very much in its early days, but there's a lot of awesome content on there. So I'd actually encourage people to maybe subscribe to that as well.
Yeah, I would actually say for people that want a ton of free coaching advice, you've got to go and subscribe to the Hill Coaching Company YouTube channel. Honestly, there is so much gold in there. I'm constantly pinging it to my clients and my network. So please go and delve into that. Please go and connect with Oliver. And as always, a big thank you to Hill Coaching Company for sponsoring, and our charity partner, Big C, who help local people affected by cancer. And I will see you this time next week for another episode of